my name's Tim Chester and I'm on the faculty of Crosslands Training and the pastor of a church in Boroughbridge in North Yorkshire. And I'm here to talk to you about some books, one book that I've written and a couple that I haven't written. Last year I kind of spent the year in the book of Colossians, preached through it in my local church and preached through it in a couple of other contexts as well. And one of my constant companions throughout that process was this little book by John Woodhouse, on a little commentary on Colossians, which I found so helpful. Normally when I start looking at a book, I get a sort of 8, 9, 10 commentaries together, but as time goes on, I find that I'm really focusing on 2 or 3 as my kind of conversation partners, and John Woodhouse was definitely in that category. It's not a heavy commentary, and yet there's a really good engagement with the text all the way through, so I found that really helpful as I was preaching through. And also I found this book helpful. I read it quite a few years ago, Contours of Pauline Theology by Tom Holland, and it's a great look at Paul's theology, and particularly how the theme of the Exodus is a very kind of controlling motif in Paul's theology. This is a little bit more technical, a bit more academic, but if you're a pastor or a student of theology, you'll find it really helpful and really suggestive. And I found it a great help, particularly when I was looking at Colossians 1 and that great hymn to Paul there, which begins, they're sort of in 2 halves, one looking at creation, one looking at the new creation, Christ's work of redemption, and each begins with a reference to Christ as the firstborn. And that's taking us back to the Exodus, where Israel is called God's firstborn, and particularly to the Passover, where it is the firstborn son who dies, and it's the lamb, the Passover lamb then, that dies in the place of the firstborn for Israel. And of course the point when you get to Colossians 1 is that Christ is the firstborn. He is the firstborn from among the dead. He is the one who dies in the place of God's family. But more than that, Paul has just described him as the firstborn of all creation. And actually he dies for the sake of the renewal of creation, which is why the hymn then emphasizes his preeminence, his supremacy in all of creation, reconciling all things to God through his blood shed on the cross. That's what Paul says. And so it gives us this really big vision of the work of Christ. And Tom Holland's book was a great help for me in that. And then one book that, well, it's not quite a book that I've written. It's Multiplying Churches, edited by my friend and colleague Steve Timmis. It's a great look at church planting, but I did contribute 1 chapter, so I did write some of it. And what I love about this book is, it's an introduction to church planting, and if you're thinking about doing that or you're involved in church planting, I think you'll find it a great help. One distinctive I think that's really important is that often when books on church planting, talks on church planting, focus on method and models, and there's a little bit of that in here too, but actually where church planters fail is not so much that they get their method wrong, but actually it's character. It's actually their own, the way they're thinking about themselves, the way they're approaching ministry, their own relationship with God. And there's a couple of great chapters here on how it is that we can think rightly about ourselves, about our ambitions, put those in a right context, how we can live lives that are trusting God, and actually how that will enable us to plant healthy churches and to sustain ministry over a lifetime. So I warmly commend it to you.